We all have moments in our lives that had a huge impact on who we are today. Something big, something small, doesn't matter. It was personal and it mattered. Today, I'll be discussing a game very, very important to me, not just because, I love it, but because it was technically the first video game I ever played and set me on the Kirby fan path for life, 24 years ago. And what game is this? Well, it's... Oh, wow, that was so corny. Did I really write this? We're so late into Kirby month that I can't even tell you the last time I talked about Nightmare in Dreamland. All I can really tell you is that since I started writing the script for that video, the very first step of the video creation process, I've been itching to talk about Kirby's Adventure. And despite that way cheesy intro, it's not even for personal reasons, like how I played it for the first time, anything like that. That's something for its own video. You'll get it when this video reaches 100 likes. Yes, I am doing this again. One of these days, it's going to work. I promise. Also subscribe, year-end goal of 600. Thank you, friends. And well, here we are, the top 5, finally covering Kirby's Adventure. Where do I even start? How about the hardware? Yeah, in North America, this was a 1993 NES game. The Super Nintendo had already been out for 2 years. And not the smartest financial decision at the time. It's a different story now. The amount of re-releases this game's had over the years is staggering. But the devs did their best to make it seem like it was a good idea. Because this game was released so late, the devs knew all of the tips and tricks, workarounds, etc. for the NES. Hardware limitations were a real thing during this era, and working around those to make a game great was really tough. What this game manages to do on an NES is out of this world. When I played it for the first time, I was almost convinced it wasn't even an NES game. The only thing that kept bringing me back to reality were the lag spikes, and yeah, this game does have lag spikes. That's the only negative you're gonna get from me in this video, by the way. And even then, if you play this on the 3DS, the lag spikes don't exist. Even today in 2020, I think the fact that this game manages to run on NES hardware is not only impressive, but something that actually holds up. For example, the rotating buildings in Butter Building, that straight up should not have been possible. At the very least, the building spinning with enemies coming in and out depending on how quickly Kirby is running, or if he stops, all with minimal lag. On an NES, you can't convince me there wasn't wizardry involved. Especially since, Nightmare in Dreamland did not have these! On top of all of that, this game decided, Kirby's Dreamland, good time, but if it's gonna be a full-fledged game, Kirby, it won't be enough. Let's just create the entire copyability system that the franchise has barely tweaked to this day. Really think about what's changed with the copyability system. The abilities themselves have seen drastic changes from game to game, of course, but the actual process of getting abilities and what they do for the games themselves? In Kirby's Adventure, if Kirby approaches an enemy with an ability, inhales them, and swallows them, he'll get their ability. When you're done using the ability, you just have Kirby discard it, then proceed as normal until you're ready to get another ability, repeat from there. Kirby Star Allies, a game that came out 25 years later, has changed literally nothing about this process. No other Kirby game has made changes to this either, excluding the spin-offs that are entirely different kinds of games. But Dreamland 2, Superstar and Superstar Ultra, Dreamland 3, Crystal Shards, Amazing Mirror, Squeak Squad, Return to Dreamland, Triple Deluxe, Planet Robobot, Star Allies, no tweaks. Well, a minor one in the Superstar games, but that's Milky Way Wishes, barely counts. On top of making a miracle happen and even getting this game functioning on the NES to begin with, they also just kind of, made a formula for the franchise that not only hasn't been tweaked, but is the most defining aspect of the entire media. And yes, I use the term media instead of franchise because copy abilities extend far beyond the games. Honestly, they extend even beyond just the Kirby brand. Other characters had done copying like this before, but none of them made a brand out of it quite like Kirby. Of course, that's all well and good, but do they actually work, or is this just a cool history lesson time with Kirby fan? Don't worry, trust me, they work. One thing I really like about Adventure's abilities is how simple they are compared to later games. I feel like it's comparable to Dreamland 1 in that regard, actually. Superstar really upped the standard for a lot of things, but before that game came out, Kirby abilities couldn't have more than 1 or 2 attacks. This means that every ability has a simple purpose, and using them is less about finding creative ways to absolutely destroy everything in sight, and more about customizing Kirby to your preference. I mean, they serve that function in later games too, but with a simplified system, it streamlines the process a lot, and I don't know, I like that. Of course, this would mean absolutely nothing if the levels weren't fun to go through. And don't get me wrong, they're a blast. I touched on this in Nightmare in Dreamland video, actually, so I'm gonna keep it brief. They're simple, but they're engaging. Very rarely are you just moving forward with nothing stopping you. The big switches give the game some bonus exploration value too, but just going from start to finish is enough to engage and have a good time. Something I mostly ignored in the Nightmare in Dreamland video were the boss fights, and I think they're a lot of fun in this game. I won't lie, they are pretty easy encounters until either Kracko or Heavy Mole, depending on if you take high jump in the Kracko fight or not, which you should, let's be honest, but they're still fun times. In particular, I think Paint Roller is a really cool idea, and there are a lot of different ways of going about fighting him. Again, he's easy, but what matters is that he's fun. Heavy Mole and onwards are when the boss fights get great, though. Heavy Mole, of course, is unique because it's an auto-scroller where the boss controls the camera movement. It's very sporadic, which constantly keeps you on your toes. It's really cool. The next boss, Meta Knight, is among the best bosses in the entire series. In this game, you have to use Sword, and Meta Knight can parry your attacks, something that almost no other Meta Knight fight has, despite this being an NES game. Seriously, what wizardry did they use? Meaning you have to time, space, and react to every single attack, not only from you, but also from Meta Knight. The climactic fight with Day-to-Day is also a lot of fun. Not quite Meta Knight good, but there's a similar game of waiting for Day-to-Day to attack and reacting accordingly. Optimizing this fight is also really fun. Inhaling 2 stars, for example, when he does the super Day-to-Day jump, so satisfying, I love it. Kirby's Adventure is also one of the few games in the series to have a world map like this one does. Other games have a map, of course, but those function more like Super Mario World than this. I've always preferred this style of world map just because it allows you to goof around and move your character. It helps you get a feel for how they should feel. It also helps making progression a lot more satisfying since you can literally see your next objective appear. Epic Yarn perfected this, for example. That's a game that I would look to for a fantastic world map. I definitely take it over just kind of moving forward any day. That actually transitions into me talking about the game's presentation really nicely. I'm not used to having this good of a transition. Wow. Kirby's Adventure is an amazing looking NES game, but I think I said that already, didn't I? Yeah, probably. Well, I talked about the hardware, but not the style. And the style of this game is crazy good, especially for an NES title. The color palettes here are really, really good. Every single color pops out. The attention and focus is still always on Kirby. The backgrounds, however, require some really special praise. These things look like paintings. They are so good. What's crazy is that everything here is just done with basic shapes, pleasant colors, and a strong sense of style. Crazy what a bunch of colors and squares can accomplish, huh? I also want to go over the sprites for this game quickly because they're really good, yes, but I wanted to expand a bit on my complaint from Nightmare in Dreamland. That enemies were too big in that game. I stand by that. Here, everything is small enough to give you free reign of what you want to do, where to go, and how you do it. And it's not like you can't still float above enemies in Nightmare in Dreamland either, which is the one potential benefit to having larger enemies, because you still can. Here, you get to breathe in the atmosphere and the backgrounds, and even the sprites a lot better, simply because you get to see the backgrounds and stuff a lot more often, and the sprites stand out for, well, having a strong sense of style. I went over that already. This is a much bigger deal for bosses than regular enemies, I will admit. They're way too big in Nightmare in Dreamland. It's so bad it almost makes me laugh. Here, bosses are a perfect size. They're large enough to differentiate from a normal enemy, but hitting them actually requires precision. It also makes the Meta Knight battle much harder. I always felt that Meta Knight was really easy in Nightmare, but in Adventure, it's always an intense fight, especially in the extra mode where you only have 3 HP. That is something special. Also special is the music. It's incredible. Again, I'm entirely out of ways to say the music is incredible. Some iconic tracks originated here, but for the most part, it's just really high quality, energetic stuff all around. The only thing I can think to add is that I like it more than Nightmare's music, but I went into that during that video, so I'll just leave some samples here and then wrap the video up. It feels weird that this video is a bit shorter than the last few. I know it's because there are some things I already talked about in the Nightmare video, but still, considering I love this game so much, I feel like I should say more. The levels, the abilities, the final boss, the controls, all that, but I think I can just leave it here. The game is amazing. The fact that it even exists is a miracle, and it set the foundation for the franchise's success for every game that came after. It's important, it's innovative, but most importantly, it's really, really good. It means a lot to me, and I've played it a million times. Honestly, I'm definitely going to play it a million more.